everybody. This video is semi-political, and not that I want to put my political beliefs out there. I'm trying to keep this as neutral as possible. But I see a lot of fighting and arguing and toxicity around the issue of immigrant children and the separation policy and everything. And what I've found is that this particular topic is really, really good at taking the piss out of people. And I see it, I hear it a lot, and I see it being used as yet another instrument for gaining supply out of people. So I'm not pushing my own personal viewpoints, but this video is more on how to navigate this tough political topic and other tough political topics in general. And so here we go. Number one is when somebody is pounding their side of the debate into you. And this is whether or not it's immigrants coming over or Russia, anything like that. The number one way to kill a political argument is you say, let's talk solutions. Because political arguments, there's a difference between empathy and sympathy, right? Whenever you have sympathy, and anybody can have sympathy for immigrant children. You know, they're in a terrible situation. Whenever you have empathy, that's when you start allowing your feelings to drive policy discussions and policy debates. It's very important to distinguish the two. So you say, well, let's talk solutions then. Okay. Solution number one. Should there be a consequence for people attempting to cross the border illegally versus the ones who are attempting to do it legally? So if you're trying to immigrate legally and then somebody immigrates illegally, should there be a consequence? What should that consequence be? Get the other person talking about this stuff, right? And refrain from putting your opinion in it. So you say things like, well, let's talk the solution then. And you know, I had somebody once trying to do this to me. And I said, well, what is the solution then? And the response was, well, everybody should just be white. Obviously, she was frustrated with the situation, and it's not a real answer. But usually, whenever you put somebody on the spot and say, well, let's talk solutions then, if they don't have a real solution, then it's pretty easy to disengage. You say, okay, sure, you know, bleach them all. You know what? I don't get that, right? But you can have this discussion. You can say, well, I mean, if you are sneaking across a border illegally and you are apprehended by law enforcement, should there be a consequence? Yes or no? And we can start there. Okay, yes, there should be a consequence. And we can decide what that consequence is later. The next question is, once you are apprehended, should those children go into the same facility as other criminals, rapists, burglars, drug dealers, child molesters? Should those children go into the general jail population with adult criminals? Yes or no? And then from there you say, well, if we're keeping them in that jail, how do we ensure their safety? And if you say, well, if we take them out of jail and house them separately, how do we guarantee that they don't lose contact with their parents? You know, it's a discussion. It's not about being right or wrong, and you don't want to make it about right or wrong. You want to make it about focusing on finding a solution. Because most of the time when somebody is trying to take the piss out of you with a political debate, it's almost always a loaded topic where there's not a right or wrong answer. The only thing you can do is just recognize that somebody's trying to endlessly take the piss, and you just, once you recognize it, keep the subject on solutions. Don't put your solution out there. Get them talking about their solutions as much as possible. Because then if they start kicking back, giving you shallow answers like, you know, what's your solution? And they say, well, I guess it'd be great if everybody were white. Well, being white doesn't have anything to do with it, because if I swam across the river, I'd get arrested. And if I swam across the river with my children and I got arrested, I would hope to God they would not put my children in the same jail that I were in. I wouldn't want my children in there. But that's just me. Now, if I were crossing into Guatemala or Venezuela or Colombia with my children, I don't know. I wouldn't want my children, well, actually I probably would want my children not in the same facility that I were in. If I were in jail in Colombia, I would probably just be dead in a day or two, you know. But you know, it's just important to get them talking about their solution, because if they want to start the fight, they can have a solution in mind. They better have a solution in mind. Otherwise, they're just starting a fight for the sake of fighting. You know, and that's really about all there is to it. Anytime somebody is starting a political discussion, especially when all they're doing is just repeating everything we hear, like they're not adding anything new, so they don't have anything new to contribute, nothing earth-shattering, there's no revelations to it. It's just, oh my God, Trump is still the devil, and America is not great again. America is worse. Well, how? Okay, well, what is the solution? You know, another good way to address this is say, well, doesn't it bother you? Doesn't it bother anybody that this law is still on the books? It's always been on the books. The previous president decided that he just doesn't have to enforce laws that he doesn't agree with. That's kind of a scary precedent. What is better? Do we want our presidents to be able to say, you know what, I don't like this law, so we're not going to do that. We're just not going to do that. This is my country. Is that the kind of precedent we want to set? It depends on the president, right? But the thing is we don't always get the president we want, because this is a democracy, right? So you have to think of, do we want if there's a president that I did not vote for, that I did not agree with, do we want them to have the ability to pick and choose law? Because when it's our president, sure, we would love for that to happen. When we had Obama, we thought he was great for not doing that. You know, whenever we have Trump, if he chooses to ignore a law, we demonize him. When he enforces a law we don't like, we demonize him. You know, so what is the solution? And we're not talking about, you know, voting solutions or impeaching Trump or anything like that. It is, what is the policy that we need to have moving forward with the president? Because either all presidents get to pick and choose their laws and we can shut our mouths when they do it, or no president gets to pick and choose the law and they need to enforce the law as it's written on the books. We can't have this gray area of, well, I just want it for my president to be able to pick and choose laws that I agree with, but your president can't do that. That's a dumb argument. You can't expect to get anywhere with adults when that's your logic. Not everybody has that logic. Most people do not actually have that logic. That's a pretty cancerous way of framing it, right? But that's basically what we do. So there's that. So these have been several examples of what to do when somebody is starting a political fight. You don't fall into the trap of trying to prove your feelings as valid. Because your feelings don't matter. When it comes to policy, public policy and law, your personal feelings do not matter. They don't. As much as I would love to say that my feelings matter when it comes to policy, my feelings don't matter. And I think that's the way it should be. We should not be making policy based on emotions and feelings and empathy. We should be making policy based on solving a problem. We have this problem, and it needs to be solved. When we enter into policy from an emotional platform, it just goes in circles. We see this all the time with the gun debates, with just about every major policy issue in this country. It goes in circles because we have stupid opinion shows. Our news now is all opinions and pontificating on individual views, and we're all so conditioned now to having social media, individual platforms. Case in point, my platform here. We get used to this idea that I can push my viewpoint as far as I want it to go, and that's okay because there's nothing but strangers out there on the internet, and I don't really care if I piss them off or not. Society as a whole, we are starting to overvalue ourselves as individuals. We're starting to overvalue our personal feelings when it comes to society. It's part of being an adult. Part of being an adult is setting feelings aside and looking at a problem objectively and solving a problem objectively. So in the case of immigration, we have to solve a problem objectively, and this is how you push the conversation. You say, what should happen if you're entering the country illegally versus legally? Should there be a consequence? And then for the people at the port of entry that are doing it legally, they're backed up forever and a day. So should we increase should we increase funding to border control? And then second of all, how do we route all these people crossing illegally through the ports of entry? Should we obstruct these trails that they're coming in on? Should we obstruct the trails? Should we make it so that if people are apprehended, should they just automatically be entered into the line? There's a number of questions. Ideally, the solution that we want to push for is something that's humanitarian, where people who are trying to get in, we understand people want to get in, and we need to direct you to the correct legal channels somehow, and those channels need to work. So, what is your idea for getting the legal channels more efficient? We can increase funding, we can staff it more, we can revise the laws, we can make it easier to get a work permit, we can make it easier to get a green card, we can speed up the process, we can make it more electronic. But we also accept the fact that less vetting, less screening goes on, and we're probably going to let more bad people in the country doing this. So where's the balance? And that is the conversation that you need to have and take your feelings out of it. I'm out of time, but I hope this helps somebody. Please like, comment, or share. We'll see you on the next video.